Howcha, hello and welcome to Keith's Whisky Vlog. My name is Keith, and as well as on YouTube here, you can find me on Instagram at Whisky Tour Guide Keith. So follow me, check me out, leave comments, questions, anything you like. Today, it won't take Sherlock Holmes to work out what is going on. We have some Laphroaig, we've got some Laphroaig, even got a tiny little Laphroaig at the front, little sample bottle. So what I'm going to do is a little taste comparison of three expressions of Laphroaig from their core range. So you have the 10 years old, the standard Laphroaig age statement, and that is this one here. We have the Laphroaig quarter cask, that's the middle one, and I also had a little sample bottle of the Laphroaig triple wood, that's the darker coloured one on the end here. So I'll do a little taste and see what differences I can detect, if any, and let you know. Now Laphroaig is Islay distillery. Anyone who knows me knows what I think of Islay. I love Islay whiskies, Islay distilleries. Laphroaig is as good as it gets, really. Smoky, peaty, earthy. If you've not been to Islay, all you hear from me is Islay, 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 Islay. Once you've been to Islay, all I can hear from you is Islay, 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 Islay. It does that. It's an amazing place. It's a beautiful island. The land, it's got cliffs, it's got hills, not quite mountains, beautiful coastlines, sandy beaches, lovely inlets, rocky shores, and then obviously these distilleries. So the history in Islay, the culture, the people there, it's a beautiful place. When you go to Islay, I work as a tour guide, and I always tell my passengers when we're going to Islay, say when we get there, remind me as soon as we get off the boat, off the ferry, start to drive on Islay, they've got this thing called the Islay wave. Every single person you drive past waves. Beautiful. It's really, and I always drive off the ferry, welcome to Islay, and I forget, the first person that passes waves, forgot. So when you're on Islay, if you're on Islay, go to Islay, beautiful place. And if you're driving about, make sure you wave to the locals, they'll wave back. So I think there's maybe 3,200, 3,300 population, something like that. So it's quite a close-knit community. I don't know if everybody knows everyone, but not too far off. And it's just nice, beautiful pace. And the Islay wave, I think, personifies the attitude on the island. You can speak to anyone, there's no problems. It's just a lovely place, lovely atmosphere. And it is the home of my favourite whisky distilleries. So we're concentrating on Laphroaig, which is in the south of the island, just near the village of Portellen, right next door to Lagavulin, a very well known distillery also. Now the Laphroaig distillery is now over 200 years old. It was opened in 1815, as it will tell you on the bottles. There were various celebrations that year, and if you go to Laphroaig, when you're driving along the road just before you turn right down into the distillery, in the peat bog on the left you'll see it's like a sort of brick rendition of a copper still. You know the copper stills where they distill the whisky, so you'll see one of those in the field, and that was unveiled by His Royal Highness Prince Charles. Apparently I believe it's the Laphroaig 15-year-old is Prince Charles' favourite whisky. I've found wherever I go in Scotland, you do a distillery tour, you go into the warehouse, and Cask 1 has Prince Charles' signature on it. He's sort of requisitioned the first cask in pretty much every distillery. So I think he likes a lot of whisky, but apparently I have heard Laphroaig is his favourite. So he went along for their 200th anniversary, unveiled this cask. It was a bit more of a successful visit, I think, for him than a previous visit. There's a story on Islay. Now I do bus tours, so I don't like to talk about the airport because I don't want you to know you can fly there. You've got to drive, through the landscape and get to know Islay. But if you do fly, the airport, and it's not much more than a runway and a little sort of shed at the end of it, I exaggerate a little bit, but around about the time that Prince Charles was having his marital problems, if you remember Lady Di, Princess Diana. So there was all sorts of rumours, the marriage wasn't going well, and Prince Charles decided to get away from it all. Now, ever since the time of Queen Victoria, She started the tradition. The children of the monarch have been put into one of the armed services, so the army, the navy, or the air force. And Prince Charles, when he was younger, after school, he served some time in the Royal Air Force. So he was on his way to Islay, he was being flown there, and when you're a royal, I mean, nobody says no to you. Prince Charles makes his way up the aisle, taps the pilot on the shoulder and says, can I fly the plane? So the pilot's like, oh well, it's Prince Charles, might as well. So swap seats, Prince Charles gets into the hot seat, comes into land at Islay, but the paparazzi have got wind of Prince Charles's visit, so there's quite a lot of photographers in the little airport in Islay, and Prince Charles comes in, and they're not quite sure what went wrong. Probably the runway was just a little bit too short, but Charlie overshoots the runway and the plane ends up at a little bit of an angle, and the world's press got quite a treat as he sort of came out with his hair ruffled and things. So yes, I think in 2015 he had a little bit more of a successful visit than the previous one. A proper Charlie, Prince Charles. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. On to the whisky. Now, peaty, smoky, this is what Laphroaig is renowned for. They have their own peat bogs, they dig their own peat, they actually hand cut their peat. A lot of peat now is sort of dug out by machines, but at Laphroaig they still hand cut the peat, and they just think that gives it more, basically more smoke in the malting process and makes the whisky smokier. So that's their little niche with the peat. It's hand cut peat from their own peat bog. I was a little bit concerned when I first went to Islay and I saw the peat bogs, saw how much whisky they were making, and one of the questions I had to ask was, have you got enough peat? Like, can I drink smoky whisky for the rest of my life, or do I have to be concerned? But peat, it doesn't grow technically, but it regenerates at around about 10 centimetres a decade, so about a centimetre a year. So when you cut the peat out, peat's like this earthy fibrous substance. You lift off the turf, you dig down, you extract your peat, and then you put the turf back on, and then the peat starts to regenerate underneath. So as long as you sort of farm it, I suppose, as long as you nurture the peat bog, you will get peat regrowing. So they've got their own peat bogs, they hand cut it, they regrow it, for want of a better term, themselves. If you get the chance, go out in a peat bog. It's quite a strange sensation, it's quite bouncy almost, a little bit hollow. The first time I went to Islay, when I was getting trained on the Islay tour, the guide that trained me, the first thing we did was go out in the peat bog, and everyone's feet got wet. And then we went to the distilleries and people had wet feet all day, and I thought, right, when I do this, what we'll do the tours first, and then we'll do the peat bog on the way home. So don't do it in the morning, do the peat bog in the afternoon, just before you get back to wherever you're staying, after you've been to the distilleries. Right, now I'm quickly going to talk about the three whiskies before I taste them. 10-year-old quarter cask triple wood. So the 10-year-old is just bourbon cask matured for the minimum of 10 years. Just because it says 10 years on the bottle, I'm sure you know, doesn't mean it is 10 years old. It means it's at least 10 years old. So there's maybe some 11, some 12-year-old, just to fill it out and make a bit of consistency. But bourbon casks for the duration. The quarter cask starts off effectively the same as 10-year-old for about 4 or 5 years in the bourbon casks, and then they put it into smaller casks, quarter-sized casks. It's more of a traditional style, and this apparently gives up to 30% more contact between the liquid and the wood. So quarter cask, and the triple wood is the next stage on again. So you've got your bourbon cask maturation, then they put it into quarter casks, and triple wood, 3 wood, triple matured. They then mature it in European sherry casks, or also sherry casks. So you've got 3 different expressions from Laphroaig and 3 different ages or stages of how they manufacture their core expressions. So quite a nice little way of doing it, I thought. So we'll start off with the 10-year-old. I don't pour measures, I just hand poured, and I've went a little bit too high. You can't go too high. I've went a little bit higher than the other ones, I'll say. So we'll start off with the 10-year-old on the nose. Now it's quite notorious, but it's maybe not as just as the word I want to use, a good Scottish word, is clarty. It's not as dirty, it's not as earthy as you might expect, but it certainly has elements of that. Obviously the smoke in the wood. No real sweetness, quite woody. And then once you taste it, you get the charred wood, the burnt wood. Often when you describe Laphroaigs, you wonder, people might think, oh, why would I want to drink that? This is like if you had a bonfire and maybe it went out before the end, so you've still got some of your charred wood with that sort of black sort of alligator skin, crocodile skin. You got a bit of that wood and licked it. That's what that's like. It's lovely. If you like Islay whiskey. So that's the 10-year-old. Boom, in your face. I often describe it as like a sort of a rebellious teenager. It's the noisy neighbour. It's maybe like the Asbo of Scotch whisky. I should really have a little glass in between here, just to have a glass of water, but I'll persevere. Now that's immediately sweeter, much more vanilla compared to the 10-year-old. Yeah, certainly it's more. When I say sweeter, it's more rounded. It's a bit more cream, a bit more vanilla, a bit more sort of buttery, almost. Certainly compared to the 10-year-old, side by side. Now, they're certainly related, but this is the older brother. Even though this is 10 years old, and this is younger, 4 or 5 years old, it's got that extra maturation, it's not as boisterous and as loud as the 10-year-old. It's got this very similar taste and notes, but it's actually calmed down. It's more rounded. It's a bit more mature somehow. Now often when I'm tasting multiple whiskies, it's interesting not just to keep going along, but to go back. I'm going to go back and taste the 10 after the quarter cask. Excuse me. It's almost a bit dry. Oh, yeah, it's got more sting. Certainly the back of your throat, back of your tongue. That's just a bit more balanced somehow, just a bit fuller. And there a floor of muck, real sort of dirty earthiness from the both. So that's the two bottles you can see here. So the third one is the triple wood, much darker in colour. These are very similar. Now both of these are they have the toffee caramel colouring, the artificial colour added. So that would suggest they're a lot lighter when they're bottled. I don't think this needs it. It's been in the sherry cask, so it's the bourbon cask, then the quarter cask, then the sherry cask, and it's a lot darker. It's much more sort of resinous wood, polished wood. It's like a good quality sideboard, this one. It's absolutely lovely. You don't get any of the fire on the nose. Certainly fruitier, dark fruit. Not too tangy. Yep, a lot sweeter. more depth to it. Again, this being the oldest one, you'd expect it to have a bit more depth, but it's almost like every stage you go up, it just gets a bit bigger. I'm just going to, just because, why not, I'm going to run through them again in the mouth while I'm here. I set myself such tough challenges. Sure. Good lady wife's rolling her eyes behind the camera. No surprise to learn I really, really do like that one, the 10-year-old. Yeah, certainly more that creaminess, vanilla. It's confused me when I'm having to describe the younger ones as fuller bodied, but there we go. Now, what I thought I'll try and do, and I hate doing it, I'm going to pick one, because that means you're unpicking two, I suppose, but I really don't know. Bear with me. No, it's going to be between one of these two. Now, the 10-year-old, one of my favourite quotes about it, I've seen a review, and it is, the review was, "It's like kissing my granny who smoked 40 a day, but with all the satisfaction of reaching a Himalayan peak." So that's that one. The quarter cask, I heard, I've seen a review, it should only be drank by men with long beards. Now, obviously it's not a beard, but it's a long tash, so I think I semi-qualify. And another Laphroaig review. Smells like hell, tastes like heaven. Bit of an exaggeration. If I had to pick one of these, if you said, right Keith, there's only 3 whiskies in the pub, 10-year-old Laphroaig, quarter cask Laphroaig, triple wood Laphroaig, I'd say, can I have the Laphroaig quarter cask, please? It's close, but I'm twisting my own arm. That's today's winner, the Laphroaig quarter cask. So, thank you for listening. I hope that was enjoyable. And if you like this video, you'll find other videos I do just standard tastings. I've tasted both of these. In fact, I've tasted all 3 of these in single tastings. I do little whisky tutorials. In my job as a tour guide, I'm around Scotland all the time, so I do just videos about touring Scotland, places to go, things to do, things not to do. So if you're looking for any tips, if you've got any questions in that regard, check out my other videos. I'm going to be adding videos all the time. So like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, and otherwise, with the quarter cask, I shall say bye for now, but thank you for listening. Cheers, Slàinte mhath.